I have the honor of introducing Durand Jacobs, who is going to have a keynote speech here. Durand Jacobs is a psychologist. He has been a professor in clinical psychology and in psychiatry, and is contributing a lot in gambling research. He has been part of journals like Journal of Gambling Studies. He has been instrumental, for example, of starting the first inpatient programs for gamblers for treatment of gamblers in 1972 in California. He's living in California, by the way, and he lives in Loma Linda, a little northeast of Los Angeles. He has written extensively in the field of families and especially children and adolescent gambling, and he has written very, very thoughtful reviews about those areas. So if you want to get an introduction, read Durand Jacobs' things there. He is also well known for his ideas about money and gambling. A krona is not a krona for a gambler, and I think he might explain those things for you. He has also made a very important contribution to a general theory of addiction. I was hooked by myself in that theory for, 10, 15 years ago, and it keeps coming back to me all the time, because I think it's a great theory, and I think he will explain it also in his speech. In addition, Durand Jacobs is a nice guy, and I met him in Las Vegas a few years ago, and there came a few persons meeting him and said, "Oh, you look great." And his answer was, "Consider the alternative." So I think we will have a great time listening to Durand Jacobs. He has very much to learn and to teach us, and we have very much to learn from him. So please, the floor is yours, Durand.
How nice to be with you. Madam Secretary, I didn't mean to make that much of an impression. I'm delighted to be here, really. I want to thank Madam Secretary and my lovely and grand and gracious and considerate hosts, all three. In many places I go, there's a host or a hostess, and that's very nice. Here my pleasures are multiple. And to you, Finn, and to you, Tomas, and to you, where are you, Michael? He's always getting, a little fellow, always getting lost. Michael, thank you for inviting me. It's just a pleasure to be here. I've met many of you in the last day or two. It's been a pleasure. A warm, hugging kind of pleasure with many. We've met over dinners, we've chatted here and there, and I'm very, very flattered to have the august company of people like Sten and Peter and so many others who are really giants in this field. And I feel kind of well honored to be in their company and in yours. How many of you, by the way, are involved in treatment of any kind of addiction? A good many. And how many are comfortable enough to say they're recovering from some kind of addiction or whatever? Not the usual. My wife says I'm a workaholic, but she's not licensed, so what does she know? Those of you who are recovering, who've been there, so to speak, are really the ones that I'm most concerned with, because you are here either to validate or not to validate what I have to say about you and where you've been and where you choose to go. I've been invited to kind of ask for your company on a journey that's going to take us, sometime over the next 2 days. I've been on this journey for 40 years, but I'm a slow learner. And you folks, I hope, can capture at least the essence of what I have to say in the brief time I have with you. The topic of my remarks will focus on a theory-driven, multi-modal approach to the treatment of addicts. And I said addicts, even though this is a conference on gamblers. Gamblers are kind of the newcomers to the society of addicts, which has been out there for centuries, of course. And what I have to say about addicts will apply to gamblers, I think. You will be the best judge of that. And to substance abusers, and to food addicts, and sex addicts, and workaholics, and all the other aholics, because people can become addicted really to anything at all, anything that they so commit their energies and their time and their interests and their needs to being in its company, can become addicted to that. A substance, an activity, a person, when it dominates their life, when they're willing to sacrifice really all in the pursuit of that particular activity or the use of that particular substance, we might say they're addicted. The question that I was asked to address very early on is, how come? Why do people become addicted? Well, I told you that I've been listening, or trying to listen, for over 40 years to addicts of various persuasions, and they've told me many stories of what is their thing, what is the thing that's most important in their lives, what they have pursued so long and so diligently, sometimes at the risk of all else. And although they've said it's this or that or the other thing, there seems to be a kind of common denominator that runs underneath all the stories I've ever heard from all the addicts I've ever met, whether they're young or old, or whether they're men or women, whether they're of this or that nationality or race. The common denominator remains the same to my ear, and that is, they are addicted in order to do one thing first. And the one thing they're addicted to, if I turn this thing on, Finn, will I make noise when I go down there?
I don't think so.
Well, let me do this. You may meditate in the brief silent period. Now, can you hear me? Oh, fine. The question that I was asked to address is, why do people gamble or pursue any, really, form of addictive behavior? And the answer is very short. This common denominator that I think is there
And basically, all addicts pursue their particular addictive form of behavior to escape from, for them, an aversive reality, both internally, historically, currently, the aggregate of all of these things, which basically raise their stress levels. Stress is the common denominator for all kinds of aversive interventions. It can be economic, can be social, can be personal, can be physiological, can be anything. But I use the term stress generically to cover all of that. It's the aggregate. And people who are addicted are attempting in their own way to escape from the stresses which are so aversive and have been so aversive in their lives. Addictions do not happen instantaneously. Suddenly the person is hooked, I think in the common parlance. Well, something may very much attention of someone about to be addicted because it does so much for them. They, when pursuing it, when using it, when engaged in it, they just, well, they say it themselves. And what they say says it all. When they encounter this thing that is going to be their friend for a good long time, their addiction, if you please, they say, oh, wow, where's this been all my life? That's their first reaction to this. That's the discovery, the first stage in the process of any addictive career. And they say that and remember it. Oh, many years later, they'll report, oh yes, I remember it just like yesterday, the first series of experiences, or even the first experience I had with this or that activity or substance or person or whatever that now has become the object of my deepest affections. They say, not only did it make me feel better, kind of physiologically, it was kind of a relief. And I'll tell you what it was a relief from physiologically in just a moment, if you're patient. But it made them feel better as to who they were. Addicts don't like themselves very well. They have a long history of not liking themselves, hating themselves even. And all of a sudden, when they're doing this thing or participating in this behavior, they feel, and they'll tell you, like a different person. I know that none of you in this audience have had that kind of experience. So this is quite alien to you. Is that true or not? I hope not. Because, of course, we've had that oh wow experience once or twice in our lives. And we've had experiences and we've sought out experiences that make us feel better physiologically and psychologically, in terms of who we are and what we do and how we're seen and how others view us. Is that still touching on your own personal experiences? Yes. And well, it should. Because addicts are really, if you'll excuse the expression, they're very much like us. Only more so. Only more so. And although that's a simple statement, and perhaps a little frivolous, still it says something very profound. It says that we who treat addicts, we who view addicts, we who sometimes are victims of addicts, are very much like them. They are not a different kind of person in kind. They're just like us, only more so in degree. Only in degree. So why are they in a fantasy world? You know, of course they're different from us. They're peculiar. Well, do we, any of us, at any time, indulge ourselves to a visit and the enjoyment of a fantasy world? Anybody here ever have a reverie? A daydream? Huh? And are you better or worse in that experience? Which way does it always go? We'd be foolish if we didn't make it pleasurable. If in it we're not better off, if we're not more beautiful, more smart, more more powerful, more everything that we'd always like to be. That's what reveries are about. We begin them as children, and we become very proficient in the practice of such reveries. And so do addicts. And they get better than we, just us, because they need to even more than we do. So they escape. That's what they're escaping from, an aversive reality. What are the component parts of that aversive reality? Well, basically, in my investigations, I focused on two areas that seem to provide some very critical contributing factors or roots to addictive behavior. One is the physiological, the biological disease, likely with some genetic roots. And the other is the psychosocial, the experiential part of the person's life and how that affects him and the pursuit later of their addictive behavior. Because in both instances, what they do makes them feel better. That's kind of a different view of addicts in a way. We always think of addicts as being self-destructive and destructive of others, and doing things that are self-defeating and damaging, threatening to their welfare in every area of application. But that's simply not true, in my experience. Addicts do what they do, just like we do what we do. There's a positive purpose. There's a positive intention in all their acts, just like there are in all of ours. No matter how bizarre or apparently self-injuring or self-defeating the behavior happens to be, there's a positive intention there. And as a social scientist, as a psychologist, as a mental health professional, that's always been my orientation, to look and see there must be a reason why these people are doing this. They're not stupid. They know that there are certain consequences of that behavior. Why do they persist? And the answer, although elusive for so long, is so simple. They do it because it works for them. Addictions are a form of problem solving for the addict. Not only of problem solving in the intellectual and the cognitive sense, but problem solving in the emotional sense. It makes them feel better. And so my theory attempts to look at the deepest biological, the continuing interaction with the environment, the psychosocial components of the individual's life, and the factors in the environment and surroundings beyond the interaction, the social, the personal interaction, and the broader environment that also impact and affect the behavior, the so-called addictive pattern of behavior of the addict. Well, this is kind of a broad sweep for one theory. But unless we do look at things in that way, this kind of all-encompassing way, at least I try to be as all-encompassing as I can, we're going to miss something. And that's the tragedy of we, the treatment people, in this room and elsewhere around the world. We've missed something. We've obviously missed something very important, and chances are more than just one thing. How do we know that? We work so hard, we're so proud of what we do, we point to our outstanding success, and yet, if we were in a ball game, what would be our score? Not so good. Not so good relative to what we like it to be. Not so good relative to what we hope to do and try to do for our patients, for our clients, for those who come to us. But our batting average is very poor. Even after literally billions of dollars have been poured into the pursuit of addictive behavior, either to stop the apparent hobby horse that the addict is using, drugs, for instance, heroin, cocaine. We hear a lot about that. Billions of dollars. We try to shake whole governments around the world to stem the flow, the inflow of a substance which We truly believe. And here's an exercise in the highest levels of fantasy. We truly believe that the substance itself is addictive. That anybody who touches it becomes addicted. It's powerful. It's an addicting substance. Heroin. Okay. How many here believe that? I'm talking to you. There are tens of millions of people, yeah, and in very good company, in the highest levels of government and the profession, who believe that certain substances have an inherent quality that makes them addictive. And that is a popular nonsense. Absolute total nonsense. How do we know that? Am I just being kind of negative? No. We know it because far more people who use that substance, who pursue that activity, never ever become addicted. So if it's the substance or the activity that causes the addiction, how come everybody who indulges in that particular activity or substance doesn't become addicted? Well, that raises a serious question. Maybe what we thought about that substance or activity and its, quote, addictive, unquote, nature needs to be looked at again. I won't go into detail on the natural experiments that we've done. I worked with the Veterans Administration Hospital System for many years, and during the Vietnam War, or activity, whatever it was, we received reports back from the troops, and we had urine tests to back it up. That tens of thousands of our young men and women were high on heroin, the strongest, most powerful, most refined types of heroin the world had yet known. That's what they were getting. And we in the Veterans Administration said, believing, of course, that this was an addictive substance, we said, wow. And we set up treatment programs, anticipating the coming of these troops, now veterans, to our hospitals. We prepared a pretty big party, except not many people came. Not many people came. They've been on this stuff for years. We had the urine test to prove it. We knew it. And yet they came home and 90% just kind of disappeared into their communities. And we tried to follow them up. You know, a lady named Robbins and her group followed up very systematically with a series of research projects and found that they didn't go into treatment in the community, and they didn't come into treatment in the Veterans Administration or any other place. A great, great majority of them who've been using this substance to excess. All of a sudden, here was a great natural experiment that said, pay attention, world. And that was 30 years ago. 30 years ago, and we still believe some of our finest folk in professional and in political situations, our drug czars, as we please, are committed to the idea that the substance is addictive and must be stopped and burned and dug into the ground. And then we will solve that particular drug problem, which is the least of all the substance problems that we have with heroin and cocaine. We have far more problems with alcohol and nicotine than we ever had with those kinds of substances. And yet, that's where the focus is. Which says something else about our public attitudes about addiction. Are addictions good, bad, or indifferent? What would you say if you had to pick one of those? Is an addiction a good thing, a bad thing, or an indifferent thing? Why? Well, most of us, I think, would be in the direction of saying addictions are bad things. Well, you can even turn it around. We could say bad things are addictions. 20 years ago, well, more than that, 50 years ago, you could go to jail for drinking. Particularly if it was your own stuff that you made in your own basement. That was illegal. And people who drank a lot those alcoholics, they were bad. We have people drinking just as much and maybe more today, but they're not necessarily bad people. There was a time when laudanum and other types of narcotic drugs, everybody was tipping in those, the ladies in particular. But that was part of the social acceptance. That was what they did. Quietly, of course, perhaps, in the bedrooms. But it was not seen as an addiction. Addiction is bad. Bad. And yet I repeat, we can become addicted to anything. Any substance, any activity, anything that so engrosses our activities, our lives, our commitments, that everything else goes by the wayside. And that's what addiction is. Addiction is a pattern of behavior. It's not a substance, it's not an activity of one particular type or another. It's a patterning of behavior that the individual pursues. For what reason? I told you half of it. The first part is to escape. To escape from stress, high levels of stress, painful stress, aversive stimuli. Not only in the present time frame, but frequently these are historic stimuli which had their first instance, their first impact on this person's life many, many years ago, in early childhood. And I've taken particular pains that I'll talk about tomorrow afternoon, to share with you data that I have on the incidence of early childhood traumas, early childhood aversive experiences of the most horrific types in the lives of addicts. And what we have in the literature on average folk shows that many of us have bumps and bruises that we carry through life. And somehow we've been resilient enough, somehow we've been fortunate enough to have supportive, preventive, if you please, influences that kind of blurred out and reduced the negative impact of what had happened to us bad things, bad things. Many of us have had abuse of one kind or another of children, and yet we're survivors. Well, any addict that you deal with is a survivor. We see them as a victim, as a patient, as someone in great need. That's, again, looking at the obverse side of the coin. They wouldn't be there if they weren't survivors. They have found ways of adjusting to a life full of stress for them. And the way we look down our nose at is their way not only of problem solving, but of self-treatment. You know, it's a little discouraging to know that addicts have been treating themselves long before we ever came on the scene. Because that's what they do. How do they treat it? They treat it by reducing, by escaping from the level of stress. If you're escaping from something, obviously you just can't stand around in a vacuum. You've got to be escaping to something. What addicts, all of them, again, another common denominator, no matter what the nature of the substance or activity, they are all escaping to a singular type of thing. And that's a rewarding, positively rewarding, altered state of consciousness. Ooh, that sounds kind of weird. That sounds kind of abnormal. An altered state of consciousness. Come on, altered state. How many here have never experienced an altered state? I'm glad to see that because you're missing something. And sometimes we use substances. Sometimes, after a busy week, what do? We have a cocktail in the evening. And why do we have a cocktail? To help the liquor industry? No, because it takes the edge off, we say. What edge? The biological edge. Gives us a little freedom, a little feeling of things kind of blur out a little bit. The rough edges, anyway. And inside, there's a little buzz that feels kind of nice. And we're loose enough to behave differently after, in this case, a cocktail or two. And we say, hi, Addie. even though we came home kind of like whatever, after a cocktail or two, we're more friendly, we're more attentive, we're nicer people, inside and even outside in our activities. And we don't need drugs, we don't need substances. We have activities. I come home, I'm all tighten up. What are you doing? I'm changing clothes. What for? I'm going for my run. And my run does the same thing as that substance. It reduces my tension, it clears my head, I feel better, and I kind of like myself in those running shorts. You know, I kind of look good. And I pat the pretty girls my way a little bit. Because I'm a different person. Oh. Am I suffering a delusion that I'm a different person when I do those things? We all play those games. How many times have you sat next to someone? How many times will you the person somebody else sat next to? And they said, "How did that? What do you do?" And you say, "Oh, I'm a brain surgeon. And I'm traveling here in the country, living in an international ward in Norway where they pass those things off." And the story goes on, and everybody enjoys it. And then the plane lands, and we say goodbye, and we put our regular clothes on, and away we are, the same old person again. We play that game of changing identity. We do it all the time. Not just on airplanes, making impressions on people. Are you the same person on a Sunday morning as you are on Monday morning when you get up and get dressed? You get dressed differently? Of course you do. As you dress, you're fitting yourself into a new persona, a new role. You're going to work instead of to church or to play or to something else. And we change roles all the time. And we do it deliberately. We do it rather effectively. And so do addicts. But they do it even more so. And so they move from stress, high levels of stress, into an altered state of consciousness, which makes them feel better biologically, physiologically, psychologically, socially. And so they pursue it. They're not stupid. There is no addict who is stupid in his behavior, even though the behavior seems to be so damaging, so self-defeating, but not for the addict. What he'll tell you is, I'm fixing myself. And that doesn't mean a fix, in a negative, illegal sense. It means a fix just like you and me, fixing ourselves, doing things that make us feel better and can carry on with whatever else the demands are in our lives. But only if we enter this altered state, because that makes us able, that arms us for what is ahead. When we go into an altered state, we need some grease to make the movement. We have to kind of grease the machinery. And what is the grease? What is the grease that all of us use, not just addicts? We dissociate. We use dissociation. Is that an abnormal behavior? No. We, all of us, using it sometimes from our earliest days. And when do we use it most? Dissociation is a way of accommodating, a way of problem solving, a way of dealing with the world, the internal world, the external world. When do we most need to dissociate? Why? When you're not good. New situations, challenging situations, difficult situations, insoluble situations, terrible situations. We can't deal with them in reality. We've got a way. We've got another way. We can create our own reality. We can dissociate. And when we dissociate, we blur out the rough edges of that reality. We assume a different identity. We even remove ourselves even further. And I've got a checklist of 5 things that I find to be operational definitions, if you please, of dissociation. And I'll recommend them to you. They're in one of your handouts. In more extreme stages of dissociation, all of us are capable of kind of watching ourselves behave like we're an actor on a stage. and we're our own audience. Anybody ever do that? Anyone want to turn themselves into treatment because you've done that? I haven't told you that. You'd be overrun. Because we all do that. We even go so far, not only to get this out-of-body experience, because that's what it is. Well, that sounds kind of serious. But that's exactly what it is. We do it all the time. This out-of-body experience. Now, some people, under terrific stress, have to do that. Because to stay in their own body would be insufferable. They couldn't stand the physical pain, the emotional stress, the shame, whatever it is. They have to get out. And the way they escape from an aversive reality is through dissociation. And we even have a knack, all of us, for kind of selectively remembering what happens in a given situation, or what did happen in that situation. Oh, you mean you're talking about psychological amnesia? That sounds pretty serious. No. It's kind of selective memory. As we get older, we do it more and more. Like Mark Twain used to say that his finest memories are about things that never happened. And so are ours. Because we kind of manipulate our memories of experience to make them more tolerable, to make them more pleasant, to make it more like we like to come back there again. So we change, and we change time. Now time is there's time. And time is running out already, and I barely begun. We change time. When things are going well, when we're engaged in something we like, what happens to time? Does it speed up, or slow down, or stay the same way? Well, it just goes whizzing by. We're called 4 times for dinner. You know, but I was just reading this last chapter, and it's so wonderful and engrossing. Or I was playing, engaged in something. Or if you're 17 years old with 11 o'clock curfew, you know, you were just having so much fun you just couldn't stop. And so you got home late again. Because time just seemed to fly. Now, many of us in this room have not been assailed with serious, painful, chronic conditions where there just was time. And pain slows down time. The same element of time, the same moment seems forever when we're in pain. And so our perceptions of time change, and so does the addicts. And when we ask them, when you're doing it, when you're involved, you lose all track of time. And the great majority of addicts, in fact, the great majority of people in general, say, yeah, my perception of time changes when I'm doing it. And that perhaps is the greatest single change in a dissociative form of behavior that we find. And this is true in adults and children and all the others that I've ever tested on this kind of dimension. So, those are the basic landmarks of where we're going, ladies and gentlemen, on this journey. You have a handout that kind of provides a roadmap. And what we're going to do this morning, and I'm told we're going to do this in 2 parts, we're going to go this far. We're going to cover 1, 2, 3 in this journey. Those are the 3 stations we're going to pause at along the way. We're going to look at the general theory and why we use a theory. I mean, why not just go ahead and do things? What do you need a theory for? Doesn't that kind of take some time away from getting out there and getting it done? Well, how many of you people on a very dark night ever opened the door in a strange place and started wandering around? You kind of dangerous. You bump into a lot of trees, you fall into a lot of holes. Now, you may get lucky. You may find a pocket hole somewhere. That's very unusual. But if you had a flashlight on a very dark night, and you want to go from here to there, and you had a flashlight, oh, that would be very, very useful. and that would get you some idea of where you want to go. You could see things in the way that maybe you're looking for, or things to avoid, if that's the matter. But a theory is a flashlight. A flashlight is the areas that we're less aware of, more darkness is decreased, ignorance is decreased. So a theory is a useful tool. It's just a tool. And we have to test theories, and that's what we're going to do. When we get to the third stop, we're going to say, okay, that's been your theory, you sucked it out of your thumb, which not seldom happens. You build a theory on everything you know about that place where you're going. You'd be stupid not to. Before you set out. You say, well, I've gotten this far, and in light of what I know so far about this journey up to here, then chances are there'll be something like this or that up ahead. And that's what the theory says. It's based on our past knowledge and acquired skills and attitudes and whatever else. And then we have to test it. Because a good theory is a theory that checks out. What you say checks out. You check it out with research. Your research, other people's research. The best test of a theory is by the most severe critic. And I welcome that kind of critic saying, right, you don't believe it? Check it out. And please share the data with me. Because I'm interested in you. You are. And what you want. And we'll talk about actual tests of the theory that I'm sharing with you briefly this morning. Let's talk about theory building for just a moment. What's the goal of a theory? Oh, it's kind of simple. You want to identify what might be causing a certain kind of behavior. As a mental health professional, I don't dive in and start treating as soon as the patient walks in the room. That would save a lot of time and make a lot of money. But I'd rather pause and try to figure out how come this patient got to be where he is before he came in my room. In a short word, what might be causing this person's behavior? What might be contributing to it? Because if I'm going to change the behavior, well, I have several ways of approaching it, of course. And what time? Tim is telling me time. 25 after, right? How many minutes do I have? I'm going to keep on to 10 minutes. Hang in. Thank you, Ben. And I'll try to keep within my time. I even forgot where I was going. All right, we want to find out some of the predisposing causes that maintain it, that set it up and maintain the behavior. Every behavior, of course, has some kind of cause. And all of us are really the products of these kinds of things. We're the products of our own experiences, our life experiences, starting with whatever we were dealt, and I like the title of this seminar. All the cards are going to be on the table, and I'm trying to turn them over a few at a time. By the time I'm through, they'll all be on the table face up. So you'll see them all, and you can make your own judgments about who wins the hand and whether you want it better. But what we want to do is identify things that set it up or potentiate the behavior and what tend to maintain the behavior. And then we're going to look through understanding the nature of these sources, the underlying factors, so to speak, looking behind the motives for the behaviors we see. If we can understand those, as well as when the behavior starts, when's the characteristic onset of addictive behaviors? Is there a characteristic onset of virtually all addictive behaviors? Would you say yes or no? Yes. Peter knows. And the particular onset we find across all addictive behaviors in virtually any society is what time of life? Late in life, childhood, adolescence, when? Adolescence. What is the most demanding, what is the most critical period of change in all the things we're doing bodily? Our bodies are changing, the hormones are raging, we're being asked to be independent and yet we need to remain dependent. We're being asked to interact with people in different ways. than we ever did before. We're being told to be independent and stand on your own feet and make your own decisions and be there to accept the responsibilities of the consequences. Good gosh, it's all piling in a very short time, sometime between, let's say 12 and 17 years of age, that adolescent period. And that's when addictive behaviors begin. Why? Because it's a way of adjusting to all that stress, to all those demands in reality that I just can't deal with. And so the obvious smart thing to do is what? Get out. Get the hell out. And that's what addictions are about. Fleeing, escaping from those stresses into an altered state of consciousness, which is rewarding because when I'm there, I'm on vacation. How many people here has ever not taken vacation? That'd be terrible. But we all take our vacations, sometime every Friday, sometimes twice a year. We take vacations from what? From what? We take vacations from the bumps and bruises of life. Vacations from life is what we take, at least the negative aspects of life, into what? The nicer things. The nicer places to go, the nicer things to do, to lie on the beach, all of the good things, which are really the altered state we're seeking when we go on vacations. And addicts do exactly the same thing we do, for exactly the same reasons, but only more so. They have more need to get away. They have less resources to deal with the life that they have to face in reality. And so they're more likely to get out. And the more often they get out, the more often they escape, we know what they gain, but what do they lose? What does every addict lose every time he takes a vacation from life? What he loses is what was going on when he's away. And that's the greatest challenge for us to treat addicts. It's not to get them to modify the behavior. Let's just say we have a magic wand. And suddenly, they no longer drink, they no longer use drugs, they no longer gamble to excess, they no longer work like crazy. All of that behavior is wiped out. And now we say, former addict, go ahead, return to life. Leave my consulting room, God bless. And what happens? As soon as he gets out the door, he's hit with a decision. He doesn't have the skills. He doesn't have the former experience to deal with it. He hasn't learned to cope while he's had his many vacations from life. And older addicts, excuse the expression, because they're all younger than me. But when we deal with addicts in the 30 to 50-year range, they've been away a long time from life. They've had many vacations from life. And in so doing, they have not acquired just a whole legion of coping skills for dealing with this or that or the next aspect of life. And that's the biggest challenge that we face. Because the so-called cured addict is an empty bag as far as his capabilities for then returning to the stressful reality that he's been fleeing all this time. He's unable to cope. He doesn't have the tools, the coping skills that he needs. And those have to be built in one way or another. We'll talk about that and some other things he's going to need to make it when we talk about the treatment program that I put together based on what I'm talking about and the research that supports it. Finally, if we do these first two things in building theories, we truly can design, on the basis of this knowledge, more effective treatment methods and prevention strategies, which is where we wanted to go in the first place. But we had to go back and build the theory and build the information and build the testing that is necessary to be sure we're on the right path before we can indeed apply it in positive ways. And that's where we failed again. We. And I use the term collectively The chances are I failed longer than any of you in the treatment program. I'm an expert on the paper. But I was a pretty good student, by the way. And I did exactly what my professor said I should do in treating addicts. And I read a good many books on treating addicts, and they all told me the same thing. Whatever he's doing, he's got to stop. I mean, if that's getting in trouble, when the obvious thing to do is make them stop. And the treatment is stopping them. Well, we don't say stopping them. Well, what's the term we use? If you're going to be a professional, you've got to speak in multi-syllables. And the term we use is abstinence. And that means you've got to stop. And sometimes we may compromise. And lift your feet, please, because I'm going to step on a couple of toes that may be exposed. And the compromises we make in pursuit of abstinence are what? What do we do with our kids all the time? They say, you cannot do this at all. But on Tuesdays, maybe you can do it. If you promise not to do as much as you've been doing. End of cognitive therapy. You put your feet down. We make compromises because we can't get the addict to stop, because what is the addict trying to do? Do what he's doing. That's his own treatment. That's the best treatment he's found, given the resources he has, and given the surrounding circumstances in the community in which he has to live. Two things I've learned as a mental health professional. One is that there's a positive intent to all behaviors. Thanks, Erickson. And two, that people generally make the best choices they're capable of making, given those circumstances. Addicts included. If we understand that, and if we respect that, and if we accept that, we have established what the books say we have to do right away, and that is rapport. We're able to put ourselves in the shoes, so to speak, of the addict. We're somehow understanding what's driving him. And if we understand more of that, and are committed to learning still more about his particular circumstances that led to his particular choice of an addictive pattern of behavior, chances are our score will go up a little. Increased knowledge will help. But if we use the same old methods, that's still not going to bring us very far along. So the increased knowledge has also got to include looking for things we've missed along the way, things we have failed to understand about this group of patients, clients, that we call addicts. And obviously we've been missing lots of things, because the relapse rates in all our treatment programs, most of which are addressed to abstinence, range from 40% in the very best programs. I was a portion of, at least I did a little bit, we built the program at the hospital in Brexville, Ohio, first treatment program. We had pretty good rates, pretty good outcome rates. About 60% a year later, when we call it anyway, were absent as far as their gambling was concerned. And that was the highest that we found, really, on careful research. Most programs, many of the very best programs, have relapse rates as high as 80% and more. And more. Programs using individualized 12-step, programs using cognitive behavioral therapy, programs using motivational enhancement, all pointed toward abstinence, didn't score so well. And the best study, and the most extensive study ever done was the match study on alcoholics. The methods we use for alcoholics are pretty much the same methods we use for other addictions, including gambling. And the batting average has been less than what we would hope in terms of what we wish for our clients. So our commitment has got to be to find out more about what we're missing, to find out more about understanding what's driving the addict, and to add something to the recipe for treatment that we've been following. And tomorrow afternoon, I'll suggest some of the things I think we have to add that we've been missing. And I'll touch on some of the things that are so important that we have to consider in designing these better treatment programs. Before going on my journey, I had to define addiction, and this is the last thing I'll say before Tim touches me. I had to define addiction in a way that was tested, in a way that really reflected the way I saw it. And this is what it is. In my view, addiction is a self-induced condition. Now there's an I'll try to justify that in a moment. It's a self-induced dependent state which is acquired over time. Addicts become very skillful in what they do. And like anyone acquiring a skill, it takes some time. And the time is invested in making it better, making us feel better, making better outcomes for us, the way we feel, who we think we are, and so on and so forth. So it just doesn't happen. It's acquired over time by a predisposed person. The group of addicts is a rather vaunted society. You can't just be an addict, sorry, even though you volunteer. No deal. You've got to be predisposed. You've got to be set up by nature and circumstance to become an addict, no matter what behavior or substance you choose to use. So you've got to be predisposed, and we have to recognize that what the addict is doing is not suffering from the disease. What the addict is doing is attempting to relieve a chronic stress condition. He's trying to fix it. He's trying to help himself. He's trying to please self-treatment. And that's what addiction is all about in my book. And each one of these components I've set up operationally so that they can be tested. And I'll try to present data that supports these assumptions. You've been very attentive and very nice, and you've earned a coffee break.